Thanks very much for inviting me today. I want to talk a wee bit about, and I've put not just self-evaluation, but self-evaluation for improvement, because I think that's important. It's not self-evaluation for its own sake, self-evaluation for improvement, and a bit about how good is our partnership working. I'm a big advocate of work with CLD in schools, as those who've worked with me will probably know. And I've seen many examples of strong partnerships, but I've also seen some that could be a bit better. So I suppose that's the kind of context for today. What makes a good partnership? Well, I think it's parity of esteem, that bit about people being on an equal footing, a bit about, oh, there it's appeared, trust, some kind of joint goals and objectives. What are we trying to achieve together rather than what we're trying to do separately? And understanding everybody's role. I think that's quite key in my experience. The next slide was one from, I've taken a couple of slides from How Good Is Our School and How Good Is Our CLD, because there are a lot of parallels there. You'll all, and everybody in this room will be familiar with the How Good Is brand. Now, How Good Is Our School, as you know, it's a bit out of date, but however, it doesn't change the fact that there is a QI around partnerships, and it's certainly one that I think we want to consider using. And what I'd highlighted in this one was, it's the one from, the theme was collaborative learning and improvement, and it's how we work together. I've highlighted some of the text, how we work together to plan, deliver, monitor and evaluate joint work. Now that's something that we see quite a bit of, perhaps some good planning. What we don't always see is how you evaluate that work together. How do you jointly evaluate? That's an area that often appears. Another one is how do we undertake joint professional learning, and how do we share that expertise? Again, sometimes I've seen that doesn't always the case, and I suppose that's what we're doing today, that kind of joint professional learning. And how together do we evaluate the impact of professional learning on learners, schools and community? There is a similar quality indicator in How Good Is Our CLD, which those of you who may know, it was published last year. It's the most up-to-date one out the brand, if you like. And there is a partnership working QI there, which again, you can draw on. And there are a lot of similarities between that and what's in How Good Is Our School. There's clear, I'm just reading some of the stuff here, there's clear ownership from the areas of work that we're jointly responsible. We work together to identify, negotiate, plan, deliver and evaluate joint work. We agree clear roles and responsibilities for evaluating outcomes. And partnership agreements, and there are often partnership agreements between CLD providers, third sector providers and schools, are clear and improve the effectiveness and clarity of that joint working. And importantly, together we plan and manage transition or exit strategies from partnership working well. So just to give you a bit of the context, those of you who are familiar with How Good Is Our School should easily be able to use any other of the frameworks. It's just to say there are lots of connections between the frameworks. The other thing I wanted to draw on was just pre-COVID. In January 2020, another conference that took place was the production of a report called Improving Life Chances and Empowering Communities. And that was as a result of the round of CLD inspections. It was the outcomes from the CLD inspections that we did between 2016 and 2019. And I was having to look back at it in preparation for this. And one of the things we said there was, one of the recommendations was around, across partners, the tracking of skills and attributes that young people are developing are not yet systematic enough. So that's not to say it isn't happening, but in terms of partnerships, that isn't always clear. And the other one was enhanced partnership working and better information sharing between CLD partners, local authorities and schools will help to ensure that the totality of young people's learning is recognised. So taking it back to that report, that's what we found from the 32 inspections that we did. That was a theme that came through. So I think it's important to put that kind of in context. So the next one was, I was just going to talk a wee bit about what we see on inspection. Obviously, we haven't been out and about doing much of that recently, but we're back doing our recovery visits and some other things. But looking back, and I thought I'd use a couple of examples from the West, as we're here in Glasgow and talking about the West, that we have seen some very good examples. of partnership between CLD and schools. And one that I would draw on now, it was some time ago, and it was Bells Hill Academy in North Lanarkshire. It was, I think it was 2012, actually. But it sticks in my mind as one of the ones that had a really clear vision of partnership working, of what we were trying to achieve, what the head teacher and others were trying to achieve together, and how they worked together to improve outcomes for young people. And there was a lot of evidence in that they did. There was a lot of evidence they did improve outcomes for young people. And I can remember the head teacher saying to me that one of the first things she did when she went to that school, one of the first people she spoke to was the homeschool partnership officer, who's a CLD worker, because she knew that that was key to identifying the way forward in the school. The other one I'd drawn was Kings Oak Primary, which is in Inverclyde. I spent a day with them as part of the inspection, and I can remember it being a really interesting day and really strong partnerships between CLD, parents, third sector, and the school. There was a real ethos in that school of working together and that kind of joint trust, joint building of things. And I was thinking about this, and I remember one of the stories from it was I'd met some kids that were running a credit union, and the young people themselves, they were the primary kids. I think it was a primary 6 or primary 7, and I was meeting with them to talk about their experience of running. And they ran the credit union with some support from staff, but they ran the credit union. And I can remember his dad had apparently been taken into hospital the night before, and his mum had said to him, look, I think his dad was sort of stable. He said, look, you don't have to go into school today, it's okay. And he said, no, I have to go in because I'm meeting somebody important. It's me. So there you are, I'm meeting somebody important. So he did come in, and really interesting stories from them, and really backed up what we'd been, what we'd read and what we'd been told. And speaking to the young people and their parents was really good. So sometimes what else do we see on inspection? Sometimes we see what I would call kind of one-sided partnerships. There's some good stuff going on, but it isn't always as joined up as it could be. Sometimes a lack of understanding a role. What's our role in the school? What's your role as a CLD worker, etc. And that can be different. We see a bit of that. And sometimes, and other people kind of mentioned this earlier, thinking about using, the PEF money, for example. Sometimes there's examples of where PEF monies are used, but there's no clear joint aims for that and no clear joint evaluation. And I think that's where we can build on things and make that a bit better. That's not to say it doesn't happen, because we've seen examples where it does, but I think if we're going to move towards the aims of the attainment challenge, I think we need to do that a bit better. And that's a conversation I often have or had in the past with secondary heads on school inspections, because we're on the secondary inspections for a couple of days around what partnerships you have, how do you develop those partnerships, how do you measure what you're doing, and sometimes sometimes it has been really helpful, but other times I think it's definitely an area for improvement.